right, Screamfest LA, I think, comes to an end with The Red Mask. We watched somewhere around like 25 films, more than Fantasia Fest, which I definitely did not think was going to happen. I thought we'd watch way less movies for this festival. But man, we've watched a lot. I've watched even more than you. This has definitely been a big undertaking. So finishing it up here with The Red Mask. Now, this is one that I started without Kaylee. After about 10 minutes, I went and grabbed Kaylee because I thought, okay, this could be something. I think this is a very cool setup and a very necessary, kind of like meta critique on the current state of the hyper politicized, discussion online right now. So what this movie is about is a gay woman of color is tapped to write the new slasher remake for a very popular horror franchise in this world called The Red Mask. It's basically the Friday the 13th or Halloween. And of course, the internet does what the internet does and immediately labels her and, says, she's a DEI hire, that she's some, dyke fucking cunt bitch who's going to ruin the franchise. And she literally hasn't released a statement. They don't know anything about her. They don't know. They just know, very arbitrary labels about her.
Yeah.
And yeah, they go fucking nuts. And I think this is a very important topic and discussion to have. I think this is a really brilliant setup for a modern film in this landscape of film discussion and people being hyper online and thinking that their words don't actually affect anybody, or
right.
Or maybe they do. They make these pointed comments because they want to hurt them and they hope that they do, and they get some kind of sick pleasure out of being bullies. And so essentially she sees all of this backlash and she freaks out and she's like, I got to get this right. Number one rule, you got to please the studio. Number two rule, you got to please the fans, right? You got to make them happy. And I was like, oh, this is great. This is very, very smart. Obviously, the people who wrote this are heavily inspired by Scream. Mm-hmm. This is very apparent, but an even more modern take on it of how people react to specific people being in the creative decision part of the filmmaking process, if they're gay or they're whatever. It's woke immediately, which is so short-sighted and so naive and so stupid, but it is a reality of how things are currently. So I think that was great. I think that setup is interesting, and there's so much to build off of there, and there's so much to say.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Unfortunately, after about the 10-15 minute mark, it just kind of devolves from there. One of the big issues, and I definitely want to let you take it from here, but I'll just say this thing lastly for me. One of the big issues with the film is not only like weird mixed messaging, not really sure what ultimately the point of the discussion was here. They started strong, but then in the end I was like, huh? But man, our main actress, she overacts so hard in this, and I don't understand it.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think that the opening, it was a very strong opening, and I was pretty intrigued by what was happening. And then as the film progresses, I think it gets kind of I started to get confused about the meta quality of it, I guess. Because there is an aspect in the beginning that we're introduced to of how she wants to write her, how she a technique that she uses to write her script that then comes up later, and I don't know, something about that was making me kind of overthink what was happening, I think is part of the problem.
Yeah.
And then combined with a little bit of that performance, which felt really heavy-handed, unfortunately, like, it was also making, like, it was feeding into that overthinking of, like, wait, what's going on here?
She just becomes so unlikable because she's extremely combative with everyone and everything from that point on.
I think that there's definitely, like, it's understandable. I can, like, break down, like, okay, well, this happens, and then that leads to, like, this kind of behavior. So I don't feel like it's unrealistic at all. It just is a weird, like, I wasn't really vibing with everyone's, like, relationship, like, at that point. I feel like there were some strange reactions that people were having that just felt very extreme to things. And then I had a lot of confusion and weirdness around the reactions and dynamic between everybody. And then so, like, as the story goes on, things did start to make a little bit more sense. Like, once we were in the thick of it, and I was like, okay, that's what they're going for. And I think the ending is fine for me. I actually don't dislike the ending, but it just kind of sucks to have a good opening, a pretty good ending, and then the middle chunk of the film left me feeling very off about it. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that with the character that you're supposed to sympathize with and you're supposed to root for, and like a lot of the messaging is centered on her being so unlikable, really hurt the film for sure. But also, yeah, I mean, I know it's a movie, right? And at the end of the day, I always try to accept it for, like, okay, things are exaggerated, things are dialed to 11 because that's what film does. And I think at the end of the day, with a film like this, it is more about the messaging than taking things literal, right? And I do try to kind of adapt accordingly, right? But with this, I just think that things just didn't play out in a satisfying way that made sense with what was set up, and I just kind of had a hard time following the logic of things.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I mean, she's dealing with, like, the fanboys, right? And they're like a very obvious stand-in for, like, Halloween fanboys or something that are like, I want Michael this way and nothing should ever change. And, and those people are fucking stupid. It's fine if you're that way. I think it's personally very, what would be the right word here?
Like limiting?
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to say it. I just think, every time a franchise tries to take things in a different direction, as much as they claim to want unique things, they don't seem to within their beloved franchises, right?
Yeah.
Like, they have very specific sets of rules. But yeah, also just that, I guess, going off, into a different area too, is that kind of stuff gets very confused in this movie too, of like, I don't even understand, because some other characters come in and then a game is played and they're like, okay, if you win, this is what happens, and if we win, that's what happens. And I'm sitting there saying to myself, how does someone win?
Yeah.
Because then they're like, oh, they're breaking the rules. It's supposed to be like the other thing, right? I'm trying not to be too spoilery, but I was like, what? How does someone win?
Yeah.
What does that even mean? Like, what's the game? What's the aim here? Huh?
Yeah.
So that was super confusing. And then things that you were just that you kept hoping that the movie was going to end up being smarter than it was.
Sure.
Right? I think that's another thing where I was sitting there going, okay, there's got to be something more to it. They're going to have a bigger twist because this is what's obvious.
Yeah.
Right? And it's what's obvious is what happens. And you're like, oh, so you're not even going to try anything.
Right.
Which I guess is kind of the point, maybe, because they are supposed to just be sticking to the rules. And then there's this, okay, so there's like a showdown scene between the writer and the fanboy, right? And that scene, I hated. I just hated all of the banter and back and forth dialogue, and I thought both of them were being stupid.
Yes.
I think both of them made points in certain areas where I was like, okay, I agree with that. But then it's like how the next thing they said, I'd be like, oh God, no, don't do that.
I guess like that's part of it is that I really hate that type of discussion around film, like on both sides.
Yeah.
And it felt like you're reading like a, I don't know, Twitter thread or whatever, X thread, with people like fighting and being very, I don't know, combative and just angry and just kind of like, so maybe that's part of it. And maybe that's, that it does seem obviously intentional that that's supposed to kind of encapsulate that argument, I suppose.
You know, another thing too, and this isn't the film's fault exactly, because I'm sure there are plenty of other people out there that don't get irked by this, but it's just something I've always hated, and this is why I'm not really a big fan of the Scream franchise. I hate that, like, inorganic name drop in movies about, like, film, where the person's like bringing up a movie and the rules in it, and it's like it's supposed to be this representation for me.
Yeah.
Right. It's supposed to be like, oh, I'm finally being seen. Randy is me. Nobody fucking talks like this. No one talks like this. This is not an actual film conversation. I always hate how it's portrayed in films.
Yeah.
I hate the way they talk. Oh, you've heard of that movie? Oh, and they get into this like dissertation off the top of their head about this like super deep cut fucking analysis of the film, and they're like bouncing back and forth off of each other on these things, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so unrealistic and so fake and so forced and such like a flex from writers that are like, see, I'm one of the cool kids. Like, I've seen that movie, and I'm giving nods to those movies. I don't know. It's
Sometimes
always irritated me. And I know other people like it, because people love Scream, and that's what Randy does, and that's what every single fucking Scream does this, and I hate it 100% of the time.
I think that it can work really well, because I do like that sometimes, but I definitely think that there's times when it just feels very forced and unnatural, like you said. I don't particularly find that to be the case with the Scream films. Perhaps that's just a bias,
sure.
But definitely in other films I've noticed where it's just, it is like the writer talking to the audience being like, see, like, I watched this stuff too, which I do get the, like, urge to name drop, I suppose, to nerd out, but it's tough because it's not really, even though it's a conversation, it's not like a two-way conversation when you're watching a film, Anyway, or maybe it is a two-way conversation, but I think that this film will have people that enjoy it. I think that if you are somebody that really does like a Scream style of meta kind of slasher, with very modern commentary around film culture, that you might enjoy this. But I can also see a lot of people feeling like us, kind of just getting annoyed with that part of the film, because both sides feel quite preachy, I think, in this.
Yeah, I think that if you're someone who is like super like anti-woke, this and that, I think you're immediately going to be turned off by this and hate it, which of course is kind of
the point.
The point.
For sure. It's a bit of a litmus test, I suppose.
Sure.
For
but I also don't think that they nail that exploration, and that's the biggest disappointment, because it got me excited and I thought, oh, this could be a really cool take on this subject that's important. It needs to be talked about. And I'm sitting back thinking about what this should have been. Like elevation and pushing pushing the envelope in a franchise or a genre or whatever. And there's a lot of rejection of that from purists, right? And to like have them going head to head is a very cool idea.
Yeah.
Like, I want it like the original, and then you have this side that's like, that's fucking boring. We gotta push things forward, or we're gonna die in repetition and mediocrity. And I think that could have been such a great battle.
Yeah.
But it just did not work at all for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but maybe there's definitely an audience for this that would get something out of this that we didn't.
Sure.
But yeah, this one just no, not for me.
No.
But also let's just point out, I was very intrigued by the opening, but I am typically not a huge fan of the meta stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
Every once in a while I am. It depends,
Sure.
It can be done.
Yeah.
The Town That Set Dreaded Sundown had a meta sequel. I thought that was super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Wes Craven's New Nightmare is really cool. Lucio Fulci's Cat in the Brain. That's how you do meta. Anyway, all right, that's that. Hopefully, that's that.
Hopefully that's that.
For Screamfest. And other than that, we'll see you next festival.
Bye.
Adios.